Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Jason Falls Show. That makes me your host, Jason Falls. Today on the program, Mathew Sweezey from Salesforce is here. He's not here to talk about CRMs or how we can manage sales data or leads or anything like that. He has a new book out, and that new book is called The Context Marketing Revolution. It goes deep into what you see in your feeds, why you see it, and how brands can design their interactions with customers to have their content seen more frequently, thus making a more productive connection with their audiences. I know this one's going to be really good, so stick around for that. We're going to check in with Mathew here in just a few minutes. We'll also have some observations later in the show that I've made in my first full week of working remotely with a large team, collaborating with clients and such. Some ideas, tips, and questions I have for you to make the rest of this week and what's ahead more productive and efficient. But first, let's talk a little bit about Switcher Studio. So I normally have a little script that I read here at this point about Switcher Studio. But today I wanted to tell you a story. Yesterday, I'm driving I went to Lexington to get my fancy microphone because I was tired of using the old Blue Snowball when the Blue Yeti is so much better. And so I drove to Lexington to the office. Nobody really was there. I went in, I got my stuff and left. So I'm still doing all that social distancing stuff. But I went and got that, and I was on my way back, and I got a phone call from the mayor's office in Louisville, Kentucky. They were saying, hey, we're trying to do all this stuff with video, and the mayor wants to live stream this, and he's doing these Facebook Lives, but we also want to bring in some recorded video and stuff like that. How do we do that? And I'm like, well, you need Switcher Studio, and Switcher Studio is something they're familiar with because it's a Louisville-based startup. That's where the company is. And they said, well, yeah, but it's recorded video. It's not live, switching stuff. I said, yes, but like the intro to my show is a video. The music bed is a video with the Jason Falls Show. I'll play it for you again. This thing right here, that's a video. So I've got that video loaded as a video file. And so you could literally record a 5-minute video, a 5-second video, 50 seconds, whatever, load that into your Switcher Studio panel as a source, and I'll pick it up here and show the people watching on the LinkedIn broadcast. So here's my Switcher Studio, and if I hit this button right here, the thing pops up there where it says come to switcherstudio.com/falls, that kind of thing, right? So that's there. I can just add a video source here. Like some of you are like, what is that dual picture down there? Well, that dual picture, I'm going to hit the AB and me and that. And now on the broadcast, you see me and Orson Welles and me. And so that was my picture from a few weeks ago where I said, look, I'm looking like Orson Welles with this fat, ugly gray beard. So anyway, this is what we can do with Switcher Studio. Take that off real quick. I'll put that back on in a minute. But you can put those video sources into Switcher Studio so that you can live stream, and in the middle of your live stream, cut to a video. You can literally make a professional TV production out of this thing. And so why would you not, right? So switcherstudio.com/falls is where you go to get a free trial. And then after that, you can use the code falls for a 10% discount for as long as you have Switcher Studio. So go check that out. They help us make the show here on LinkedIn Live, the video portion of the podcast, look good and look professional. And we thank them for that and want to make sure that you have the opportunity to do that with your live streaming. And think about it. I mean, you're having to create content from home, a lot of us, or in isolation from other people. A lot of us are using Zoom meetings and Slack calls and Skypes and GoToMeetings and whatnot. You've got a bunch of video sources that you can pull content from as you're interviewing people or whatnot. And then you can take the content library that you have of videos for your product or service or business or whatnot, load them into something like this and actually produce a higher quality production that you can live stream or you can record and put up on your YouTube channel or on your Facebook channel or whatever. So switcherstudio.com/falls and the code falls gets you that 10% discount. So check that out. Do that as you're thinking about the content that you're going to have to create here in new circumstances that we're all having to undergo here on the interwebs these days with the mighty fun coronavirus that we're all having to deal with. So if you are dialing into the live recording of the podcast on LinkedIn, you can jump over into the comments section and ask questions, interact with us here on the show. I'm checking to see if the technology is permitting today. I think it is. I'm also, though, just so everyone knows out there, I am hearing some clicking in my microphone. So that preceded a failure a couple of weeks ago. So I'm hoping that I can figure out how to fix and avoid that here in just a second. So I apologize if there's some technical issues coming through, but it looks like the stream is coming through fine. I can see me, and I see people watching in the chat room as well. So thank you for coming by the show and watching us on LinkedIn. If you are listening to the recording of the podcast and not watching live on LinkedIn, remember that we do this thing live, or one of the ways that we do our interview shows is live on Tuesday morning at 8 a.m. Eastern, 5 a.m. Pacific. You can join me on LinkedIn. Jason.online/LinkedIn is the URL to go to follow me there. And if you do that, you'll get those little He's Live notifications. And there we are. Okay, enough of my babbling here about things. It's time to get to the good stuff on the show. Mathew Sweezey is the Director of Marketing Strategy for Salesforce. He spends a lot of his time focusing on the future of marketing to give strategic advice to some of Salesforce's biggest clients and help the top sales and CRM solution in the world stay out in front of market changes to continually stay in front of the consumer. That work led him to author a new book called The Context Marketing Revolution. It's just out from Harvard Business Review, and this book is lighting up the conversation online. Mathew, good morning and welcome to the big show.
Hey, man. Good morning, everybody. How's it going?
It's going okay. So before we get any further, let's do a check-in. You're in Charleston, South Carolina. How are things with you and yours and in your community with this whole coronavirus thing?
Yeah, well, I think we're like everyone else, pretty slow around here. Everyone's working from home. Everyone's just trying to figure it out day by day like everybody else. Yeah. So, but I'm good. All my family's good.
That's good. That's good. I've had a couple of friends tell me in the last couple of days that the cases of coronavirus are starting to hit people they know now. So the circles are getting closer. But hopefully, knock on wood, we can continue to persevere through this, and people are as lightly affected by this as they can be from here on out. But glad to hear you're doing well. Okay, so you are a futurist, someone who keeps a firm eye on what's next, what's coming, what consumer behavior is telling us. But you open your book by talking about June 24th, 2009. So why is that date so important?
Yeah, so it's super important. Why it's so important is because we have to realize that this thing that we call marketing is not a truth in itself, right? It's a game that we play, and it's a game whose rules are dictated by the media environment that we operate in. So if we just understand that core concept, right? These are games that we play. Well, then if we say, okay, if it's a game that we play given in an environment, well, first, let's say, well, where does the original idea come from? And so then to track that, I went way back in time and start to break all these things down. And then I said, well, if that's the foundation of these ideas, is that still a truth in the modern era? And what we find is it's not. And so that day in 2009, June 24th, 2009 is the specific date I was able to find that we actually entered a new media era, where the foundations of how the entire media environment operates are completely shifted. And why that's so important is because now we must function and rest this core idea of marketing on a new foundation. And I say that foundation is context. And just one more clarification on that day. It's not that you're going to Google what happened on this day. It's not that the iPhone came out, or it's not that, some magical thing happened. What really happened was that's the first day in the history of the world where consumers became the largest creators of noise and ever will be moving forward.
Wow. So because of that, the proliferation of media, the fact that consumers were producing more media than the traditional media outlets, if you will, that created this signal to noise ratio problem that we've been trying to deal with. And so context then becomes our charge, according to your book. So give us an idea what you mean by context marketing and how brands can apply or incorporate that into their thinking.
Yeah, so just to kind of, tie the two things together, right? So if we say that context is the new foundation of the media environment, let's just be really clear, right? This isn't something you get a choice about, right? This is how the new environment operates. Look at any format of media, right? Take a Google search. We can all ask the same question, but we are all going to get a contextual answer back. Look at any social media feed. No feeds are no longer chronological accounts. They're contextual feeds based on what is most engaging for you at that point in time. And it just continues on and on and on. We look at new medium formats like TikTok, doesn't even have timestamps because it's only going to show you what's in context, and time has no bearing on that context. So, with that idea, we then can say, okay, now we understand we need to focus on context. And really what that means is we need to focus on helping people accomplish their goal in the moment. If we can do that, we'll be able to break through, and then we will drive the engagement because we are actually focusing on helping them. And that's in contrast with the old idea, which is we must grab their attention. And by grabbing their attention and putting this creative message in front of them, we will be able to get them to do what we want. And the reality is we just don't have that chance anymore.
So you say in the book it's about understanding the consumer's immediate need and being contextually relevant to them in that moment. I get that.
Right.
Is this perhaps the result of all this proliferation of media channels being so overwhelming that we've all developed a case of ADD?
Yeah, so it's much deeper than that, right? So we talk about noise and we talk about media, but we miss the core foundational fact that this is not just more media. This is not just more noise. It's a radically different format coming from a different player operating in a different way, right? This is the first time in the history of the world that humans can interact with each other at this scale. And we then think about if that was a tinderbox, this current point in time has just essentially made that bonfire go way up because everyone is going to be forced to find new ways of interacting. All these different nodes of technology and connecting, right? They were nascent for a lot of people, right? My father, who lives in Athens, Georgia, and is not very technical, is having to learn how to be technical really quickly so he can go to Bible study with all his friends, and he's using a smartphone and video. We are jumping up to a new baseline level of connectivity. So it's not just more media, it operates at a radically different format. And because it's coming from other humans, we must take count of that and say, listen, people are now used to hearing from other humans first. How can we be more human?
So you also say in the book that the trick is to, if there is one, is to building dynamic experiences for consumers, activities and programs that are deeply engaging. So how are we supposed to solve problems in the contextual flow of their daily life while, steering through an ADD audience or steering that ADD audience through something that may derail their ping pong thinking and along with it their natural flow?
Yes, I mean, these are lots of different questions coming out at the same time, right? So let's think about a couple of basic facts. One, the concept that people have ADD. I don't necessarily agree that we have ADD in this modern age, rather that we have a higher level of expectation of an experience, right? If people truly had ADD, then no one would be watching Netflix like they are because they would have too much ADD to stay on Netflix. The reality is they spend hours watching video. If it's something they want, they will engage with it. But it's a higher level of expectation. So if we can't meet that expectation, they're off to the next thing and to the next thing because the opportunities are there, right? So I think we need to focus on that first and saying, well, if they're constantly wanting these things, well, then two, how often do we actually talk to our customers to figure out what they actually are wanting from our marketing and our experiences? Basic concept, right? We all produce content. How often do we reach back out and ask, did that content meet the experience expectations that you had for it? We don't. I ask this question, and less than 1% of marketers have ever picked up the telephone and reached out to somebody that engaged with their content to ask them, did this meet your expectations? How do I make it better? Because what we look at is it was downloaded. But here's the data. What I asked, I found 400 B2B buyers, and I asked them, have you ever been disappointed with content you've engaged with from a brand before? Now, obviously, a lot of them said yes. In fact, 71% of them said yes. But the staggering point is that 25% of them said they'd been disappointed to the extent that they will never engage with that brand ever again because they don't have to. The opportunity costs. Everyone creates content. We are in a world of infinite media. We don't need you. And if you can't create a contextual experience first by understanding my needs, talking to me, two, then creating it with me, then I don't really need it and I can just bypass it.
So I think that creates a little bit of a conflict because the one of the concepts you've already mentioned is we've got to get away from attention getting schemes. But what good is our marketing if we're not getting people's attention? And what good is it if we lose their attention and then have to try to get it back? So it seems to me that you kind of have to have that attention getting piece of things in order to even have the ability to have context apply. Am I wrong there, or am I thinking about it a different way?
Yeah, so the word attention is a tricky word, right? So if someone, first off, no one says, I want to give you my attention. That is not a thing people say. People don't say, I want content. What they have is they have problems and needs, and they look for experiences to solve those, right? So by solving that need, we then get the engagement that we want. Now, we could call that engagement attention because they are engaging with us, or we could just simply call it engagement. It's whatever we want to use. The difference is that when we say attention, that usually puts a creative lens on how we think about creating things, where we usually say, am I creating something that's attention grabbing? Is this going to get somebody to stop? Rather than asking the question, what is their problem and is this a good way to solve it? Right. So I think that's where we need to be careful on that word of attention and say, yes, they are going to give us their time, hence their attention, because they're going to focus on this experience. But that should not be our goal of getting their attention. Our goal should be helping them accomplish this goal or whatever that moment may be. And then you can say, okay, well, then look at the moment. And where is the moment? If it's on social media, why are they there, right? They're there to escape their daily jobs, to either project an image of themselves or to have that image validated or to belong because they're social creatures, right? So look at one of those four factors and then engage with them in that context. Great example. There's a HR software company, right? And they hire a comedian to write a comic for them. And they've done this for years. And they post that comic on Facebook. They also then, right behind that, post their blog posts. The comics that they post get 60 times the engagement on Facebook, not because it's more attention getting, but because it's in context of why the people are there in the first place. No one's there to educate themselves on your company blog on Facebook. They're there to get away from you on Facebook. Hence, that's why they find the comedy so appealing, right? So we need to think about those concepts and those ideas.
So with the comics as an example, that obviously amplifies that point that the individuals are the chief noisemakers, and that also I think implies that influence marketing is baked into what you're saying as kind of essential to what we're doing, because in that particular context, your comedians are your influencers. They are people who may bring a following with them, but at least bring a different spin on how to create that attention and how to get that reaction from people. So talk me through how influencers kind of bake into the contextual experience.
This is a great conversation. So influencer marketing is 1,000% contextual. Why? Because of one specific thing. It is human to human. And I think that's the biggest thing that we've missed, right? When we went into this internet age, anyways, if you follow Marsh McLuhan and just how people normally change and adapt to scenarios, the first thing we normally do in a new situation is take what we know and try to apply it into the new scenario. So when influencer marketing came out, what do? We took what we knew about how we use famous people in marketing and advertising and essentially fit it into that mold, which was all we need is the biggest name that we can find to tell the world about what we want to do. And how well does that work? It doesn't. Because if you have Beyonce put up a tweet that says, hey, this is the coolest thing, just 0.01% of her audience is going to see that, right? And then that's it. You have a tiny little drop in a massive ocean, right? But what we need to realize is that was the first step that we took. What we must realize is the highest beneficial value, the highest thing that we need to focus on is human-to-human connection, right? How do we help humans connect together, right? And that is a core aspect of context marketing, right? I talk about with, not on in the book. And so if we then say that, okay, well, influencer marketing, it's human to human. How do we connect humans together? But it's not just influencers. It's we have to have a continuous stream of this, right? We need to find ways to work with influencers constantly to make sure that there's a constant conversation going on. And Daniel Wellington did a great job of this, right? They sell $200 million of watches now. And 99.5% of the content about that brand is not created from that brand. Right? We need to understand that human-to-human connections is what we must focus on. And that's a radical shift from a brand saying, how do I sit internally and come up with this brainstorm session to create this thing, to now, how do I work with my audience to co-create these things? Right? That's the revolutionary aspect of this idea.
That's definitely revolutionary from a brand perspective, and I can sense the collective CMO sphincters tightening up when we talk about it too, because like, oh wait a minute, I gotta lose control of my content. Are you kidding me? So in the philosophy, if you will, that you present in this book is kind of anchored around brands being, I think, available, personal, having permission, being purposeful, and authentic. So take us through those, sort of 5 pillars of this contextual marketing argument and explain to us briefly what each of those are.
Yeah, so those are really the 5 elements of an experience, of a contextual experience, right? It's got to be available. And each one of these is a sliding scale, right? But let's just look at a couple of them like in detail, right? Available is pretty obvious. If you can't have an experience resonate with someone if it's first not available, right? And it's had to be available depending on what they want, right? Are they asking a question? If we don't have an answer there, it's not available, right? If we're going direct to them, are we going direct to them in some type of contextual methodology, right? Permission. There's no way that we can get a message to somebody via most of these formats if we first don't have permission. Additionally, permission opens up a massive other thing that we must have when we do these things at scale, which is personal data, right? We then say, okay, now the next is personal. And we're very familiar with this word of personalization, but that's not what we mean. What I mean is how personally can you deliver it, right? How one-to-one, how human to human can you get? Right, go back to all those keywords: user-generated content, advocacy, influencer marketing. These are all one-to-one, human-to-human methodologies, right? Going next to that is authentic. All this is for naught if whatever you create is not authentic, right? Pepsi, great example, right? Remember how much crap they got into over the whole Kendall Jenner scandal because they just totally tried to fake social justice and totally were inauthentic. We must be authentic. And right now, that's extremely important, right? Empathy. Empathy is a major aspect of authenticity. And then finally, there's purpose, right? We must focus on something past the product, right? Here's the realization. Your product only has a very, very, very small contextual period of time in someone's life, right? They are only using your thing for a very small amount of time. You have got to find a conversation with them that goes past the use of your product and focuses on a greater problem and solution in their life, right? And when we look at brands that do just that one aspect, they are 2 times more likely to be significantly beating their direct competition. By the way, doing all of these things, you are 10 times more likely to be beating your direct competition.
That's great. So I want to kind of throw things back at you. Play a little devil's advocate here, just a bit.
All right, that'd be fun.
You want brands to be available, but they don't want to focus on attention grabbing stuff. They need to be personal and have permission, which kind of implies they have to have the customer's attention to gain all that. And then purposeful and authentic are kind of those passive buzzwords, if you will, that imply we have to have all the feels and all that jazz. But what if I'm a new business who doesn't already have their attention? Or what if I'm not IKEA or Tesla, which you call out several times in your book of doing a great job of contextual marketing? Or what if I'm a CEO who has to move the needle by Q3 and I can't slog around with all these passive, non-attention seeking ideas? What do I do then?
Yeah, there's 3 words that you need to focus on: with, not on. Right? Find ways to create things with your audience. Rather than sitting internally inside your organization saying, how creative can I be? Go directly to your audience and ask them, what needs do you have? How can I help you fulfill them? And then do that, right? So look at what people are doing right now, right? Lessonly created a coloring book. All the parents are at home trying to keep up with their kids and trying not to go insane, right? So they make a coloring book and let you print it out right there, give your kids something to do. Noom is a nutritional brand, right? What they did is created care packages, right? Talking about small businesses, right? Seamly is a small sewing shop, right? They create clothes. They work directly with their audience to create these clothes as they're going through, right? Don't just wait till you've created the product to launch it out and then come up with a messaging campaign to tell the world about it. Get them involved from the very beginning. So by the time when it's actually out, there's already demand built into those things. Right? That's the concept of context, is working with them the entire way. Right. And so, small businesses, anyone can do that. And so that's what I think we really need to focus on, is how do we work with them, not on them.
That's great. So as much as I may have seemed to play devil's advocate with questions here today, it really is a great book. And I love how insightful it is. But I want to make sure the hardline sales folks and CMOs who really need to know this stuff hear you defend it against their likely objections, because they need to go read this. This is going to be really good for them. It's a really good book, very relevant. Tell people where they can find it and you on the interwebs.
Yeah, so just really quick to piggyback on that last comment,
Okay.
right? A lot of the marketers, and specifically the progressive marketers that read this book, are going to say, listen, I understand some of these core concepts. I know some of these things, and I know you do, right? I wrote this book to help you make the case internally when you can't get the executive buy-in, when you need additional firepower, when you need the data, when you need someone else outside of your organization to say, hey, listen, this is the road we should be going down. This is a book from Harvard Business to help you make that case, right? So that's one of the big reasons why I wrote this. And then if you're wanting to catch up with me in other ways, I'm on LinkedIn. You can just go ahead and follow me. I post a lot of stuff on there. And then on Twitter, it's at msweezey on Twitter. So feel free to follow along.
And I've posted those links, a link to the book on Amazon, you on LinkedIn, you on Twitter, and I've also posted a link to Salesforce, because that's your day job. That's what you do there, over on the comment section on LinkedIn. And then I'll certainly make sure those are in the show notes as well on the blog post wrap up after we're all done. Mathew, thank you so much for taking time out of your busy week of not commuting, but working from home. But also congratulations on the launch of the book. It's fantastic. I hope people go out and buy it. And thanks for taking time out of your week to join us today.
Thanks, guys. Have a good one.
All right. That's Mathew Sweezey, ladies and gentlemen. Absolutely great book. I got an electronic copy probably, I don't know, maybe 4 or 5 weeks ago. I don't think it was absolutely this is what's going to press, but I got to get an advanced copy, and I read through about half of it. And then I put it down a little while, and then I kept reading, and then I put it down a little while, and I came back, and then last week I started kind of rereading it. So I've kind of gone through it twice now in order to prepare for asking these questions today. And it really is a good book. So go click that link over there, The Context Marketing Revolution. It's from Harvard Business Review. Go check that out on the Amazons, order your copy. And now more than ever for businesses and brands, context is key. It's critical, because if you are marketing this week, if you're putting out marketing messages and new content this week, or probably for the next few weeks, maybe even months, depending upon how long this whole social distancing, physical distancing approach is in. Technical difficulties are always a fantastic thing to have to deal with on live video and live streaming, but that's what we got to do. Okay, so thank you to Mathew Sweezey for coming in. Wanted to give you some observations now from a week or so of working from home. If you're watching the video, you can see that I'm at home, and I'm working from home like everyone else, or like most people are this week. And we actually have and the entire agency at Cornett is working from home. I think there are a couple of people who are actually going into the office, but there's nobody there. So they're still practicing good, safe social distancing and all that good stuff. But most everyone is working from home. So we're having to collaborate as a team and as sub teams on all the different brand work we're doing and clients we're working with. We've had to do conference calls with clients on Zoom or Slack or GoToMeeting or WebEx or some other type of meeting software. And so just some observations from the week that I wanted to sort of check in with you on and throw out some tips and some tricks on some higher productivity ideas. There are always meetings that either check-ins, which are now moving to a couple of minutes in Slack, and you don't have commute time. So there's higher productivity that's actually happening, at least in our experience, during the week of working remotely and trying to collaborate from home. So I think there's a level of higher productivity that is happening, which is really interesting. But the connection is important, and face-to-face is important too. So I think our team is starting to see, I think, a little bit of sort of frustration that this is continuing to go on. I think we'll get over that hump here at the beginning of the week, and probably today, if we haven't already, and kind of move through it and have a great attitude the rest of the week. But I think we're all going to go in these cycles of, hey, we're really, really productive, but we're starting to get frustrated that we can't get back to that face-to-face, that we can't get back into the office, that the world, the circles, as I mentioned to Matthew earlier, the circles of this thing are getting closer and closer to each of us. So hopefully we can soldier through that and continue to have a great attitude. Pardon me. I think this is just being recorded now, so I can edit all this out. But the video chat and conference call stuff has led me to surface some pet peeves for me that are pet peeves for me just because I know that we can do some simple things to make these video chats and conference calls a lot better. And so just some observations. When you're on a video conference call, a video chat, whether it's on Zoom or a Slack call or Skype or GoToMeeting or whatever, one thing that I would encourage everyone to pay attention to and practice, even if you're having an engaging conversation with multiple people, it's very important to not talk over each other, because when you do that in an audio situation where all the different microphones are bringing all the audio in and putting it together, when it goes into other people's earphones, as you've probably experienced, you can't really hear anything because the sound keeps talking over top of each other. It doesn't mix well. It just blurs each other out. Another trick to this, something that I try to do when I'm in a conference call, especially if it's an engaging call and there's lots of people talking or having to talk, when I'm not talking, I try to ride my mute button. So mute yourself when you're not talking. If you mute yourself when you're not talking, you take one more audio stream out of the mix or out of the attempted mix, because it doesn't mix. It just lays on top of each other. And that can create a little bit better clarity in the sound that's coming through to other people. This is especially important for those of you who are using the microphone on your computer and taking notes by typing on your computer. There's always the typist on every conference call who, while you are, sitting there on the call, all you can hear is, or, right? Because they're taking notes while everybody else is talking. Well, if that mic is on, it's picking up the type. It's picking up the pounding on the keyboard, and that oftentimes can serve as another layer of audio that comes in and makes all of the audio for everybody a mess. So work that mute button. Turn it off when you're not talking. It just takes a second to turn it off and back on, and you have to pay attention to it. So it's a little bit of an adjustment, but it makes the call so much better for everyone else. Obviously, a lot of us are working from home, and we have children or we have spouses or other family members that might be in the other room talking or listening to music, or they might turn on the TV. Anything like that can also, again, if your mic is on and open, it can pull in that audio and, again, serve as a layer of audio that's trying to mix that won't, because of the way that online meeting services work. They don't mix together. They just stack on top of each other, making it impossible to hear any of them. And so that's another sort of reason to ride that mute button. So the mute button is everyone's friend in an online video or online conference call situation. Also, if you have the opportunity to log into a meeting via your computer, the audio clarity is so much better than logging in with your phone. I realize sometimes there's bandwidth issues and you have some static or something like that you have to deal with. And so it may not sound good to you, and logging into your phone can be better. So not in every situation does this apply. But in most situations, the computer audio is going to be so much better. So if you prefer to call in via phone, you're just going to sound better, more than likely, if you're able to dial in on the computer. So consider that as well. Obviously, if you're getting cut off or the bandwidth issues can sometimes make your computer audio choppy. Obviously, we had some sort of issue this morning with our LinkedIn recording because we got knocked off after Matthew was done. I'm actually just basically broadcasting this into the iPad where Switcher Studio is to record the show right now for posterity in our recording. So you're going to have some bandwidth issues sometimes that might make your audio sound choppy. It might make things. It might cut you off You might have your coworkers complaining that you're fading out or we're losing you. So sometimes you do have to jump off and get on the phone because sometimes the phone can be more clear. But always try the computer first, because the difference between the muffled sound of a phone and the clarity of good bandwidth audio is a big difference. And for those of us who have things like white noise deafness, where if there's a lot of extra sound, it's hard for us to hear. I have white noise deafness, so like if I go to a restaurant or a bar and it's loud and there's a lot of stuff going on, I can't hear what you're saying if you're 2 feet in front of me. Your voice blends in with everything else in the room, and it's just one big wall of noise. I can't hear it. So if people have those kind of problems, these audio issues are particularly frustrating for them in meetings. So just do a couple little things here. Ride that mute button. Try to call in on the computer versus the phone, and that typically solves them all. The meeting software, I will say the face-to-face connections are so critically important that we're not able to, because of the social and physical distancing that we're having to practice as a good practice for this coronavirus thing, is very frustrating. And the physical face-to-face is important. But in lieu of that, I would strongly encourage you, whether it means you have to get up and put makeup on or comb your hair or whatever, I would strongly encourage you to use the video on your meeting service of choice, whatever your meeting platform is. Turn the video on. Just seeing your coworkers, your colleagues, your clients, seeing that they're doing okay, they've got a smile on their face, being able to make that virtual face-to-face connection, I think interpersonally just helps. Being able to see facial expressions, all that kind of stuff, makes the communication better too. So I know a lot of people are hesitant to use video because they don't like the way they look on camera. Nobody cares how you look. Nobody cares about the aesthetic. They just care to be able to see you, to make that visual connection. And so do that. If you feel like that means you have to get up and do your makeup and your hair and everything else, comb your beard or whatever you got to do, okay, take that extra step. You're going to be on video. Just make that assumption at the start of the day, and I think you'll have stronger connections as a result of that as the day goes on. Just some observations. The typist on the conference calls is one of those things that I'm always like, with my colleagues can tell you, we'll be in the middle of a call and I'll go, mute button, mute button. I'll just scream it at them so that everybody remembers to mute when they're not talking, because, well, white noise deafness is my main problem, but it's something that will help you and your colleagues if you do that. So do that. All right. Next week on the show, we're going to jump from context to conscious. Jim Joseph, longtime advertising industry notable, will be with us. He has a new book coming out called The Conscious Marketer. It's actually a perfect follow-on for our discussion today. You may know Jim from the Experience Effect book series and blog. He's also the global director for BCW, Burson, Cohn & Wolfe, a well-known ad agency based in New York. I'm really excited to chat with Jim. I've been a long-time follower of his online, and I'm really interested to get to talk to him, get to know him a little bit better, and sort of pick his brain, as it were. So we're going to do that next week on the show. You can join us for the live recording of that show with the video stream on LinkedIn at 8 a.m. Eastern, 5 a.m. Pacific. If you can't join us live, the audio recording will hit the podcast feed later that morning. We're also, by the way, now taking the video feed off and putting it on YouTube. So if you go to jason.online/YouTube, you can get to that channel where you can subscribe if you prefer to put on YouTube videos and or do that way instead of doing podcasts and whatnot. We're going to be we're on the YouTubes now. The last 4 or 5 episodes are up, and we're going to continue to post them on that YouTube channel. So jason.online/YouTube for that. So Jim Joseph will be here next Tuesday. That is, what is next Tuesday? Is that March 31st? I think it's March 31st. So yeah, let's see you there for that. How about that? Cool. All right. I think that wraps it up. That'll do it for this edition of the Jason Falls Show. If you like the episode, share it with your networks or jump over and give us a review on your podcast of choice, network of choice. We certainly appreciate that. Look for me on the social networks. I'm at jason.online/LinkedIn, or just search for Jason Falls. Until next time, everyone, I'll see you on the interwebs.